This is a topic that I wanted to discuss for a while, and I thought it was really interesting because it's something that happened to me, and it's something that I'm still trying to figure out myself. Basically, how it started was after a few hundred DMT trips. I don't really know how much, but it was a lot. I had a different experience that was completely beyond anything that I've experienced before, because I've never had anything actually speak to me or say anything. And this time I actually had an internal dialogue with voices that were communicating and responding to me in real time. I was completely convinced that these were real entities because there was a lot of coincidences and synchronicities that were happening in the situation, that it seemed very unlikely that this was all just hallucination. And they told me a lot of things, but one of the things that this stood out the most was they gave me an explanation for the beginning of existence, or the universe, I guess. And basically, they said that it started with a point, and we called this source. And then the source decided to split itself into positive and negative because it felt that even though it was whole with itself, it wanted to explore, I guess, polarity and duality and difference. So you got positive and negative, which I guess would be like male and female and everything like that. And this thing, when it split, it became a line with those two polarities, and then it sort of created a circle around those lines so that positive and negative are sort of connecting in a loop. And then they just had this one circle that would just loop around. So it was movement, but it was stuck in a loop that couldn't move anywhere, so it was chasing its own tail. So this was a state of dysfunction. And then it got a clever idea to spiral off and sort of jump into a new direction and create a second loop. So that created two loops in between each other, which was like the infinity sign. And they called that like zero and infinity. So the point was, I guess, zero, and the infinity loop was infinity. But I guess it was saying that even though nothingness is nothingness, it's actually everything, because it's all one, apparently. That's how I understood it, and that's why they always say that whenever Buddhists become enlightened, they always talk about how nothingness is actually full of things. So later, someone, it was explaining to me that this sounds like the flower of life, because apparently those two loops that created the infinity loop, it just goes on forever and ever, and that's what the flower of life is. It's these circles arranged into a pattern that can expand out into infinity. And it was saying that this echoes throughout the universe in a micro and macro scale. So in my other videos, I think it's titled Schizophrenia, Entropy, and something else. I'll put it in the description. But I basically was giving examples of what I did afterwards when they told me that. I basically went on a this is to that sort of comparison thing and tried to look for this pattern in everything, and that's why my pattern recognition was extremely higher in this state, because I was looking for all these different patterns that are based on that formula. And now I want to share a thread that our fellow materialist that I've shared a lot on this page, his name is Red Greenvine, he explains what the voices are and how they come about. So I'll explain the first one, which is basically about how our signals resonate and how being stoned basically changes the time it takes for the signals to fade. Try to consider the flux of new attitude every 3 seconds, generally fading and becoming replaced with a continuous rhythm that feels like a solid self. Each attitude is how we address the totality that we experience at the moment every 3 seconds. It's smooth like riding a bicycle, arising in response to sensation and memory, and fading in 3 seconds, leaving space for more attitude to play out. Kind of like pulsing reflex to the world or whatever you have made into your world. When stoned, the waveforms in the brain fade more slowly, but continue to arise as per usual. Ergo, a personality frame set or attitude will fade more slowly such that 3 seconds fade becomes 6 seconds and more, but the arising 3-second pulses continue. So if you are more resonant, stoned, or emotional, or emerging from sleep, then you may have an expression reacting to a previous expression while the previous has not yet faded. Both contend in the same brain. It's easy to establish a train of both or more contenders. Normal, no overlap, a bit stoned, some overlap, very stoned, almost full overlap. And this is what he explains you can experience as voices based on this theory that he mentioned previously. The experience of entities can range of types of encounters, such as what is listed below in increasing complexity. 1. A conversation with oneself. 2. A conversation with a semi-autonomous entity that seems to usurp the conversation of oneself, while appearing to stubbornly hold a position that is counter to one's own. 3. An argument or ongoing dialogue with a semi-autonomous entity in one's own head. 5. A struggle with what seems to be autonomous entity for control of one's thoughts, speeches, and actions, during which one may seem to be possessed, or one may fear to be possessed. A conversation or encounter with an external shadow that appears to continue forming or resolving as a person or character. 7. Bits of a character forming in a scene similar to the Cheshire Cat. Oddly, they seem to know totally what you are thinking. 8. An animated objects from some other scene resolving in this scene with apparent autonomous intents of their own. The very instance of their appearance endows the certainty that they are entities. Members of the family from the past or future. 10. Members of other species. In all cases, the entities have enough momentum and consistency to seem real to the tripper. The astonishing fullness of their appearance seems resolving and is all the more convincing as it continues. It is difficult to accept that these experiences appear as extensions and trails that follow a mere thought or sound or shadow or glint of light. It's hard to imagine that the echo or trails of these impressions can expand and be sustained so completely as to appear fully or semi-autonomous, even though they are not essentially different than the trails of your fingers as they pass before your eyes when stoned. Entities, in fact, are trails of thoughts and attitudes coexisting with your usual mental monologue or central thread of experience. So personally, I have a little bit of issues with what he's trying to reduce the experience to, because there's a lot of things like the whole archetypes that keep reoccurring that don't really fit into this explanation. He's trying to explain away the trickster in very weird ways, so I don't necessarily buy that, but I do like the model of this specific resonant mind. So I want to basically ask you guys if you've experienced any voices, and if you've experienced any sort of internal dialogues, and if you did, what happened. So I'll see you later, and hopefully you guys will get back to me.